1-2 coming. And the slider in there, strike three. Conforto's hit on the pitch.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to another edition of Uncle Stevie's Nephews podcast. It's me, Brian. I'm joined with Spencer and Frank. We're coming off the Mets just canceling the final game of the series with the Marlins. Marcus Stroman came in to pitch 9 pitches, I think was the count, and then they decided to cancel the game. My thoughts on it, at first, I didn't realize that the rule was that the Mets made up the decision to start the game and not the umpires. So I was mad because I thought it was the umpire's fault, but then it seems like it's the Mets' fault for starting a game that just didn't make sense to start. Kind of already wasted a Marcus Stroman start. He throws 9 pitches. He had a tweet that said, you could take from it that he's not going to be playing in today's game if it ever restarted, which basically means that he's probably going to have to wait 5 days for him to play again, which is just such a waste. I don't know. It's another like frustrating thing that happened this season to start in the first like 11 days of baseball for the Mets, wasting your number 2 pitcher and having to reconfigure everything is really frustrating.
As far as like the umpire side of the game, I mean, I'm an umpire myself, going into the 9th season, so I know there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff not a lot of people do know, but I did not know that. I thought the umpire would make the call to say, hey, we could play or can't play. I did it 4 times today, so I figured it was the same exact thing.
I think
a lot of rain here in Jersey.
What I saw was the Mets make I think the Mets like talk to the umpires or something, and they make the decision if they can start, and then it's up to the umpire's jurisdiction to call the game.
What frustrates me is that like as soon as the game started, you could see it wasn't just kind of raining; it was raining hard. So like if I'm about to go on the field, I'm like, wait a second, maybe I should take a couple steps back and not go on yet. Like I mean, like if it was right away though, like if this happened, 3rd inning, 4th inning, whatever. But like from the very first pitch, you could tell it was raining hard. So I just think that whoever's in charge, the Mets, the umpires, very foolish decision. And what boggles my mind is that Stroman, like you said, Brian, threw 9 pitches. He has to wait 5 days after throwing 9 pitches.
I know.
That doesn't really mean he didn't throw 90, he threw 9.
Yeah.
I don't understand why 5 days. I don't know. It seems very confusing to me. And you know what? Maybe the Mets kind of benefited from this, having the game canceled, because if you didn't, you're looking at a bullpen game probably started by Robert Gazelman, which you could chuck that up as a loss. So then you also just have a tired bullpen for this whole next week. Mets' next off day is next Monday. So, I mean, they might be better off, but who knows the end of August what their schedule looks like having a doubleheader. So, you know, it's just a tough start to the season for them. They already had 3 games canceled, and like you said, only 11 days in the season, and we already have so many games to make up. Who knows what other games are going to get canceled from here and then. In a full 162, this competitive division, not good start.
Yeah. Well, starting with the start. So the Mets started off the season 2-3. I think we all predicted last week like a 3-2 start. So we were close if the Mets decided to score any runs for Jacob deGrom yesterday. So the Mets started 2-3. They lost 2 games to the Phillies, 1 game to the Marlins. The beginning of the season, probably some of the bigger storylines, which is what we're going to get into, is Michael Conforto struggling, runners in scoring position, Francisco Lindor kind of struggling. I don't really think he is struggling, but I've seen people saying that he is. And yeah, so we'll get into all of that. So the first thing we talked about, Marcus Stroman, we wanted to say, so like the canceled games is, as Frank kind of mentioned, is going to significantly impact the Mets, especially because of these 7-inning doubleheaders, which are probably going to be at least a couple of those Nationals games. I think they figured out for one of them, it's like an off day. But then again, that takes away an off day for the Mets, which isn't good. They already said that the doubleheader is going to be August 31st against the Marlins. From there, let's talk about the struggles. So Michael Conforto struggling. I think we can all agree on that. He had, I think it was the first game, he had like 2 hits or something. Might be wrong about that. And then from there, he's only had 1 other hit. The biggest thing really, and why he started hearing boos, because he constantly gets put in the situation where there's runners in scoring position and he either strikes out. I think he hit into a double play the other day. And if you're the number 3 hitter, that's what's going to happen. That's why a number 3 hitter is probably the most important part of your lineup. In today's lineup, he was pushed down to number 6, which Luis Rojas said is hopefully going to help him get out of the struggles. And one thing that I want to say is at the beginning of the season, batters do struggle. And it's not, Michael Conforto is not going to be like this the whole season. And Michael Conforto, we know, is a streaky hitter at times. Right now, it's totally in his head. You saw the frustration yesterday when he struck out. I don't know. It's been a weird start to Michael Conforto's season, especially with like that lean in bullpen, which we should probably talk about. I forgot to add that. But yeah, it's a tough start to Conforto's season.
I mean, like you said, it's only 5 games, but he's had so many opportunities, though. Like the amount of base runners that he's stranded is unfortunate because you look at Brandon Nimmo, who's leading all of baseball in on-base percentage, while Lindor is struggling. On-base percentage is still pretty good. So, I mean, you're having all these opportunities for Conforto, and he's just doing the 2 things you can't do. Striking out and grounding out. He's not, flying out. He's not putting together a long competitive at bat. I mean, he's lucky he got away with the lead in with the umpire, should have called strike 3. So, like you said, obviously the contract extension is looming, and you can see it is mental. And it was interesting that Rojas was willing to make a move. I think he did that probably to maybe please the fans. A lot of fans have been calling for that. No, if a guy is slumping, move him around a little bit because that's a lot of pressure right there. Because, again, you're going to have so many opportunities. Put him 6, put him 7, let him relax a little bit. Just get his approach. Do what he does. Get on base. Go the opposite field because, Conforto for his career, he wasn't exactly, Mr. guys on base and going to always get the hit. 2020, we saw a big-time improvement compared to years past when there were runners on. He wasn't pulling as much, taking a half swing. I'm not really seeing that approach from him. I'm seeing he lays off a little too much. And with runners on base, the only way to get hits with runners on base is to swing the bat. And so many times you see him just, waiting. And I think it's putting him into bad counts. And that's what led to the struggles. I think Dom Smith can make a perfectly fine number 3 hitter. Once Jeff McNeil gets going, I do want to see him at the top of that batting order. He could really, create a lot of different things because, again, if you're not getting a hit runners on base, I know McNeil will move the guy over, set it up for Alonso and whoever. So it's going to be a balancing act. And we know Rojas does not keep a consistent lineup to begin with. So, that's something that's going to fluctuate throughout the whole year.
I would just say offensively, it's really frustrating to see that we can't put the bat on the ball. We can't move runners. Like when I was covering Wednesday's game, 24 runners left on base. Yeah. Are you kidding me, man? 24? I think we either got no runs or 2 runs in that game. And I was like, come on. Like it's frustrating. Like after we spent all this money to bring Lindor in, and we're talking about all these chances. Yeah, we're going to bring DeGrom back. Syndergaard's going to come back, even though they're not batters. It's like, and Conforto's next. Everyone's getting a big payday. It's like, geez, all this money, we still can't do well. It's like, this is our defined season of, yeah, we have the money now. That's not it's not an excuse anymore. Now we actually have to play, and we need to come to play every single game because at the end of the season, we're going to always miss by those 2-3 games to the Brewers, and we're not going to make the wild card. It sucks to think that way.
And what's frustrating me too is the fact that last year in the beginning of the year, the Mets struggled with runners on base, similar to now. And one of the main things people say, oh, you don't have Chili Davis in the dugout. If Chili Davis was in the dugout, they would have that approach. Well, Chili's there, and he's still not driving in runners. And what frustrates me, too, is like you said, Spencer, they had a very good offseason, made all these additions. But so far, this first week or so, it's looked a lot like 2020. Just, whether it's the bullpen, whether it's the runners on base, everything, it looks just very similar to 2020. And they can't have another year like that. That would be it would be such a failure.
There's a few things going off of that. First out, it's very in the back of my head, I always have what Spencer's thinking, we spent all this money, why can't we do anything? But then again, it's only 5 games, and that keeps me going. There's going to be times when the Mets are going to struggle, and I saw on Twitter today that someone said there's been 3 Mets teams that started 2-3, and that's 1960, 1986, and 2015. And that made me somewhat happy. Okay, maybe there's a pattern here. But either way, I think they're definitely going to get out of this. I think for the Mets, the season started off very strange. Francisco Lindor was coming up on the last day. Then the whole schedule got messed up. I think they'll definitely figure it out. It's just frustrating because I do have how Spencer's thinking in the back of my head all the time when they can't pull together a couple hits and get a runner in when it's runners in scoring position.
They'll have easy ones too. It's not running third 2 outs. They have multiple guys on base, less than 2 outs, and it's they don't get a single run. It's opportunities that it should be perfect. And like we were saying, middle of the order, you're your number 3 hitter up. It's not your pitcher's batting. You have these perfect opportunities and they can't come through.
I wonder what your guys' take on it, but when fans started booing yesterday, do you think fans should be booing 5 games into the season, or does it not make sense for them to do that? Because I have my opinion on it, but I want to see what you guys think.
I personally don't like booing at all. Even if I'm a Mets fan, I'm never going to boo a Mets player. That's my ideology. And it's going to suck. I'm trying to think of someone. Let's say Jose Altuve comes to the Mets somehow. I'd be really mad. But I'm still not going to boo him. I'd be really, really, really mad. I would never buy a Jose Altuve t-shirt. But I just can't see myself being oh, screw you, Mets. Because, I've been here for at least 20 years. So it's we've been through the ups and downs. I got to keep running it out. Can't give up now.
I mean, I'm frustrated that he's not coming through, but I'm not saying, boo Conforto. But I do, like I said, you do want to move him around because it's clear it's mental. Like, we know Michael's a good player, and it's all just in his head right now. Like we said, the contract and everything like that. So just move him around and see if you could make something better happen. But to have him bat third every single day and deal with that pressure, I thought it was a good move, and we didn't get to see, the benefit of it because, of course, the game got rained out. So, I mean, and that was the other thing, too. The other day, they're talking about, the Mets, they got lucky finally. They got hit in the elbow. Right back to unlucky today. So, I mean, it came back around real quick.
It goes both ways.
Yeah, it's probably going to be more unlucky than lucky by the time the year is over. So, that whole storyline evened out real fast.
What I was going to say about the booing is that I would never boo. Like, I'm not the person to boo. But I don't know if I completely understood people saying it's 5 games into the season, you can't boo yet. The way that I looked at it is the fact that the Mets have had so many opportunities, especially, and to me, it made a lot of sense in the Jacob deGrom game. He's pitching outstanding, and it's a constant pattern that the Mets can't do anything with Jacob deGrom. I would be so frustrated if I was at that game. You're seeing like a magician pitch with Jacob deGrom, and then Michael Conforto comes up, strikes out with runners in scoring position, and just the Mets in general can't do anything with runners in scoring position. And it's just so frustrating. I personally would never boo.
Would you boo Rojas?
Rojas I am mad at, but I don't think I would boo him either.
Okay. Because he's not playing, so maybe you can get him instead.
Yeah. Basically, what I'm trying to say is, like,
I think some players, you can motivate them. Some guys, it can really get in their head. So it definitely depends on the particular player.
So Jacob deGrom, I think we got to talk about that. I already started talking about it, but yesterday, 14 strikeouts, 8 innings pitched, 1 run, looked the most dominant I've ever seen him for like the first 2 innings. Gave up a few hits here and there, but was still amazing. And I saw a tweet after the Chisholm home run. This game's going to end up 1-0, isn't it? And I was like, there's a high chance it's going to, but like, come on, we can do something. And then it ended up, well, it didn't end up being 1-0. It ended up being 3-0. But the main point of that tweet was that the Mets were not going to score any runs, and the Mets didn't score any runs. First off, Rogers pitched outstanding. I don't know if it's just that the Mets make every young pitcher seem like Garrett Cole or Jacob deGrom, but I mean, he pitched really well. When he was in trouble, the Mets couldn't get anything across, and that's two-sided. First off, Rogers pitched really well, and the Mets have it in their head that they can't score with runners in scoring position. I don't know how Jacob deGrom deals with this, because the fact that he pitched outstanding and got the loss. Another thing that stays in the back of my head is everyone saying why would he want to extend with this team if they can't do anything for him when he pitches so well? And I always saw that as I don't think that's going to be in his head, but at a certain point, how many times is it going to happen and they do nothing for him?
I mean, to me, as all things happens as a Mets fan, this is the thing that bothers me the most is like you said, Brian, someone who is so, next level compared to other pitchers in the league. Pitches out, like you said, maybe one of the best starts we've seen from deGrom. 8 innings, you know how rare that is? I mean, the fact that Ross even let him pitch that long impressed me compared to what happened on opening day. Yep. So the fact that Jacob pitches that well, this guy gets an infield single. He's tagging up. deGrom is doing everything he can, and you can't do anything for him. And even if you did score a run, let's say, deGrom gave up 1 run, but the Mets scored 1 run. Mets scored even 2 runs. Edwin Diaz blew it. So no matter what, the Mets find multiple ways. Like the opening day game, deGrom also pitched even amazing. And the Mets blew it because of the bullpen. So they find and defense. They find so many different ways to make this guy lose games. It's really just ridiculous. And the fact that it keeps happening so many times, this is the first, second time. And this happened, 50 times, 40 times? The fact that the Mets have a losing record when this guy pitches, when it's not his fault, is crazy. You would think that deGrom versus Matt Moore, that's a win for the Mets. That's a very favorable matchup. Why are those losses? When deGrom pitches, you're oh, we're going to lose. It just doesn't make any sense. It really doesn't.
No, it stinks. I mean, I think there was a stat line that said it was the 31st time on opening day when they screwed over deGrom by losing the game on him when he was up. Now, so this is the 32nd time. I mean, unfortunately, money does talk. So I think that will work in our favor when it comes to extension-wise, conversations. I'm glad we have Cohen on our side as far as paying him enough money to be hey, you can come back. I know we let you down a lot, but you can still be the same pitcher. You can be with us. So hopefully that conversation goes well because he has a lot of money to dish out. We're very thankful for that because if the Wilpon, I think he would have jumped ship. Mm-hmm. There would be no way he'd be on our team in 2022. deGrom should be an automatic win against most pitchers in the MLB. Easy dubs. We just have to hit the ball. That's all we have to do. But that we have to focus on every game. We always have to hit the ball now. So we always have to play defense. We always have to learn how to base run. We always have to do this. It's everything. It's all unfolding, and hopefully they can mold it together and get this like streak started. Something.
I remember last year at some time, like I was getting frustrated with this Jacob deGrom stuff, and then I saw someone say, it makes sense that the Mets don't score a lot of runs when he pitches because they're playing against the other team's number one pitcher. But in this case, with Matt Moore and Rogers, both of them are nowhere close to their number one pitchers, and they still can't do anything. It's so frustrating and almost comical how the Mets just can't do anything for him. And I remember there's definitely been times where Jacob deGrom pitches one day and the Mets score no runs, and the next day they come back and like score like 8 runs. And
on opening day, they scored nothing for him. The next day, 8
right,
runs.
Yeah.
It's like, what are you doing? What was that?
Well, like that's what's so annoying. That like they could do it. Like it's not like there's a bad offensive team. Like they could score the runs. They just don't do it for deGrom. And like you said, they're not even facing an ace.
Yeah. So going back to more struggles, I've gotten some comments on our Instagram and in the lives that I've been doing that Francisco Lindor is struggling, and he's nowhere worth the $300 million. And everyone knows baseball players aren't worth $300 million, but Francisco Lindor is not. I don't think is anywhere close to struggling. Yeah, he hasn't hit the ball as good as we saw in spring training. I think that's all going to turn around. Had a lot of situational hitting, getting sacrifice flies, getting that sacrifice bunt yesterday, which he's probably trying for a hit there. But either way, I don't think he's struggling like Michael Conforto's struggling.
He's just not knocking out home runs like he was in spring training. Like everybody, they get very caught up on the long ball. It's a long ball league right now. So, if you're not hitting extra base hits, then everyone's like, oh, the guy's struggling. But, when you look at his on-base percentage, how much is he really struggling? The fact that when Conforto got hit on the elbow, they intentionally walked Lindor to face Conforto. Like stuff like that. You don't intentionally walk a guy that's struggling because Conforto, like that's true struggling if you want to face the guy. So, and people, they are quick to, overreact to things like that. And even when Lindor, remember when in the very first games of spring training, he kept making comebackers to the pitch. It was like, oh, Lindor, we wasted the trade. Oh, Cleveland ripped us off. Then the guy's knocking out home runs as in the May spring training. Like, oh, pay him.
Mm-hmm.
So, we as Met fans, we could turn very, very quick. If he has a great week this week, we all love him again, But if he has a bad week, the next week we'll hate him again.
Yeah, I think
that's just Met fans in a nutshell.
I think it goes with the trend of how Mets games have gone recently that we're losing. Another thing that we're struggling in is the bullpen. I think the first 2 games was definitely at least a punch back into reality for me that it's not that easy to fix a bullpen. Trevor May, the first 2 games looked very bad. I guess is the nice way for me to put it. Miguel Castro, the first game looked fine. Then the second game, he didn't look good. Jeurys Familia has also not looked good, except he came in yesterday for 1 batter and got a strikeout, which just goes to show you what Jeurys Familia is. He's so fickle. Edwin Diaz, he looked so good his first time out and then looked terrible yesterday. It's so frustrating with Edwin Diaz in specifically because we know what we gave up for him. Who else pitched bullpen wise?
Jacob Barnes.
Is Miguel Castro, Trevor May. Who else pitched on that game? The first game.
Loop.
Right.
Yeah, Aaron Loop did. He didn't do well.
Comes in to face the lefty
first batter.
Nice lefty specialist.
Oh my god. That game, I think I texted you guys. I was irrationally mad after that game because they were winning 2-0, 8th inning. You got that bullpen. You got it all figured out, and then Trevor May comes in and blows it. But then Trevor May, his 3rd time out, looked good. That game, the whole bullpen looked good. I guess it was the 4th game. And then yesterday the bullpen didn't look good again. So we'll have to see how things go. I just want the Mets to start getting in the groove of playing games, and then I can truly know what this team is, because it seems like it's all over the place to start the season and they can't get in the flow of things. And I just want to see that start to pick up before I make a decision oh, this bullpen's terrible. Oh, we can't hit the ball, things like that. With that being said, there's still players out there that the Mets could get, like Shane Green, which I saw. I'm always on Twitter now for Mets stuff, but Pat Ragazzo, I don't know what his what he is. I don't know who he writes for or who he reports for, but he was basically saying that Shane Green's still out there. He's just waiting for the right opportunity. But he also said that the Mets got good news with Seth Lugo that he should be coming back in May at some point, so they probably wouldn't go after Shane Green, which I'm not that happy with. Again, I do want to see how this season plays out longer before I say that the bullpen sucks. But so far, it hasn't looked good. And if you had a Seth Lugo and Shane Green, that'd be really nice. But yeah, what do you guys think about the bullpen struggling?
I think bullpen placement kind of goes hand in hand with what we're going to talk about a little sooner with the manager, Luis Rojas, because if someone has a bad outing, would you really want to pitch him again the next day and expect him to do better? Like, it's just common sense. At least I thought. I mean, I'm not an MLB manager. None of us work for the MLB yet. But I mean, if someone's not doing well, usually you don't keep putting them out there and letting them struggle. And
thing
it's
with
just,
that,
I feel
sorry,
like
the thing with that,
I mean,
that was like kind of funny is Rojas probably brought him in because the Mets had such a big lead that they thought that he could like be somewhat comfortable to pitch how he's supposed to pitch, and then he still screwed up, which is
yeah, it's like, come on.
I think what my problem is that, the fact of the circle of trust, I guess we could say, how much they're using Miguel Castro almost every single game. Robert Gsellman has not pitched yet. Dylan Betances they went to because they were down by so much in that game against Philadelphia. So eventually, what, Miguel Castro going to have a good season. Oh, that's good. But if you're using him, most every day, and you're using Trevor May almost every day, long term, it's going to have big implications. All of a sudden, these guys are not nearly as effective. And you know what? You're like, oh, well, Seth Lewis come back in May. This division is too tight. There is no expanded playoffs. I don't want to get into a hole and be like, oh, we're just waiting until May. Then our bullpen will be all fixed.
Yep.
I don't want the Mets to fall into a hole. They're already, behind as it is. They have to make up all those games, things like that. You always need more arms. So I think that Shane Green, if the price is right, I'm all for it. But I'm very curious to see how, Dylan Betances going on the IL, because the velocity is still just nowhere close to where it needs to be for Betances to be effective. Call up Hildenberger. I like him. Funky delivery. Very good spring training. Give him 1 run. So let's see what the kid can do. I mean, it's going to have to be from within. Hopefully Drew Smith can get here sometime soon.
Right.
Our oldest Vizcaino, let's get him rolling. Get Robert Gsellman. Goodbye. Jacob Barnes, after the home run, he did have a good outing.
Right, yeah.
So, I don't know, like you said, the bullpen is very consistent because Diaz looked great on Thursday. But then, like you said, yesterday, it looked like, vintage 2019 Diaz. Mm-hmm. So, and Familia, the same thing. Oh, how come we didn't have Familia come in, I think, instead of Diaz? You know what I mean? So, I just think, like you said, Spencer, the decision that Rojas makes, like the matchups, the fact that when DeGrom, the 8th thing, I saw Familia warming up, I was like, why am I warming up Familia with a runner on base and DeGrom on the mound? That's the guy I'm in a rush to go to. It's like so mind blown. But again, you can't overuse these arms because like now it'll look fine. Castro pitches great, but then come September, come August, Castro's not as effective. You'll know why.
Like Miguel Castro has looked good to start the season, but it's always been a thing with them constantly using him. Like last season to end the year, Luis Rojas constantly went to Miguel Castro when he wasn't even pitching good. And I don't know what they like, if he has like that elastic arm that sometimes people talk about, like maybe he can just keep on pitching, but I don't understand the love affair that Luis Rojas has with him, at least as of yet, unless Miguel Castro turns into a really good pitcher, and he has pitched semi-well to start the season. I just don't know why it's a consistent thing with Luis Rojas. I was going to say the thing with Jeurys Familia that really sucks is like every time I see him warming up in the bullpen, like my heart just drops. Like I know, like if we have a lead, bye lead. Like he's going to give up if we have a 2-run lead, he's going to give up 3 runs, just like 1 run extra, and to make us losing. I don't have any faith in Jeurys Familia at all. And I'd say like out of all the bullpen pitchers, that's the one person that if I see him in the bullpen, like I might as well turn off the TV because I don't have any faith in him. Which is so bad because he's like probably going to be somewhat of a key part of our bullpen throughout the season, which is not good. Speaking of Luis Rojas making strange decisions, he's made like a boatload of them. I mean, starting the season off, Kevin Pillar gets the start above Dom Smith against a lefty. Yeah, Kevin Pillar can hit lefties. He hit lefties well during spring training, but Dom Smith during last season hit very well against lefties. I forgot what I saw. I was like, upper 200s that he hit against lefties. Yep. First off, it's Matt Barnes. It's not like some ace of a left-handed pitcher who, like, if Dom Smith is going to be such a key part of our lineup, we don't have faith in him to hit against Matt Barnes. Just boggles my mind. I think Dom Smith is a key part of this lineup, and we saw at the game that he came back when he hit the home run. Dom Smith has done so much for the Mets. Not only with his great hitting, he's been such a good locker house guy. when Pete Alonso had that great season, Dom Smith didn't put his head down. It's like, I'm not going to root for my team and I'm not going to root for Pete Alonso because he's taking my position. That's not what happened. He rooted for the team. He's been huge for the Mets, even off the field, like I said. And for him not to get the opening day start, even though Connor wasn't really opening day, but that like just didn't make any sense. That was one decision. Then what was the other? I had like a whole list that I wrote out.
Batting VR 6 far too often.
Jeff McNeil not being up in the lineup. Let me pull that up. But yeah,
I just feel like we're still in spring training mode. Like I'm not. I know our opening day technically happened. We still don't know who's playing where. Like when do we put in this guy at this certain point? Like we should, or at least Rojas in his mind should have. All right, left-handed pitcher. Who's my best guy right now? In the seventh inning, who's going to come in? Eighth inning, right-handed pitcher against a right-handed batter. Who's my go-to guy? Now, like, this guy, he gave a couple home runs yesterday. I think he's the right one. Let's go with him. And he just throws him in there.
Yeah,
it sucks. We're setting our team up to suffer.
I think the problem with Rojas is that he gets way too caught up on righty-lefty matchups. I think he overthinks that kind of stuff. The fact that last year, just because right-handed, J.D. Davis batted third the majority of the season just because he's right-handed. So now you have, VR bat sixth because he's a switch hitter and you put Jeff McNeil seventh, or, you put Kevin Pillar leadoff and you have Brandon will bat eighth. Like he does these weird things just because of lefty-righty matchups that it's like eventually it comes down to the point. It's like, okay, whether they're left-handed or right-handed, do I want Jonathan VR or do I want Jeff McNeil?
Right.
That shouldn't be much of a debate. Not because the guy's right-handed, because the guy's left-handed. He overthinks that kind of stuff. And then today he had 3 lefties batting in a row, which again, we didn't get to see, but he's just like all over the place with his lineup. First, he needs lefty-righty no matter what. They bats 3 lefties in a row. Like, what? I mean, I don't think he knows what he's doing. And like you said, Spencer, too much experimenting for the regular season. Like you said, no more playing around. Like, this is not the time to be like, oh, let's try this, let's try that. And then it doesn't work and you lose. It's like, I mean, well, what are you waiting for? I mean, no matter how short the season is, now is not the time for experiment. Like, this is something that really should have been settled in spring training. You should have thought about during the offseason. Now should not be the time. It's like, oh, let's do these different things. And the fact that you're playing VR over Guillorme, I mean, Guillorme, again, was supposed to start today, but we didn't get to see him. But even just before that, the fact that you're starting VR over Guillorme made no sense to me. I mean, VR, as much as I like his talent, his abilities, he looked lost in spring training, looked lost in 2020. So that is carried over. Meanwhile, Guillorme, he gave you a competitive spring. Guillorme is always going to give you a good at-bat. Whether he fights you off for a bunch of pitches to fly out or he draws a walk, Guillorme is just a good at-bat. And I just think that just because you want lefty-righty, the drop-off where it's like you have Lindor, then Conforto, then Alonso, then Dom Smith, then it's like VR.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, where did you come from? Like, you have all these good players back-to-back-to-back. Then like, it's VR. It's like, what? So, I mean, just stuff like that. It really makes no sense to me.
Yeah, that's true. I found my list.
She's got it. Oh, go ahead.
You can go, Spencer.
I was just gonna say, like, it's crazy to think, like, you think Rojas would think that, oh, I have a hot seat underneath me. We didn't do well in 2020. Oh, so maybe we didn't make it. And like, there's so many articles and broadcasters saying, yeah, Luis Rojas is your last season to prove yourself. You're playing for the Mets, man. Like, this is New York. This isn't Colorado. This isn't like a low level, organization as far as like market wise. Like, he should know whatever decisions he makes is gonna affect what contract he's expecting.
Yeah, I mean, Sandy already said they didn't pick up the option. So, I mean, for a fact you're on the hot seat.
Right, yeah. Yeah, so I found my list. This I made opening day when everything was going bad. So, well, things are still not going great, but either way. So I have Dom Smith not starting, then not pitching Dom Smith when the bases were loaded. I think it was the 4th inning. Yes. And that's more of a controversial take. I think some people, I know my dad and my brother, when we were watching the game, didn't want Dom Smith to come in because they felt like you're giving up the defense. But I think they also forgot that we have Alberto Mora still on the bench. And that was like a huge part of the reason they got both Kevin Pillar and Alberto Mora, that they could have flexibility.
It's the only reason Mora's on the roster. I mean, it's just to play defense.
Yeah. And I think that was the perfect opportunity. Bases loaded, get runners in. Hopefully they had runners in scoring position, so hopefully they found a way to hit the ball. But either way, Dom Smith, I would have rather liked to see than Kevin Pillar. Then we have, this was the first game. Then we have taking DeGrom out after 77 pitches, when he literally said before the game, I wasn't watching when he said this, but I saw the quote that he said, the limit's 100 pitches. if I did the math right, 100 minus 77 is 23 pitches. So I think
he was dealing. Not only was that 77, but was straight up dealing. Like if it was 77 and he was struggling, that's fine, but he was dealing. And then, what I hate about that, when I talk about long-term implications, when you use the bullpen up for DeGrom, you don't have the bullpen available for David Peterson. When David Peterson was on the mound, Miguel Castro was unavailable because he just pitched 2 days in a row. So, DeGrom doesn't need the bullpen. These other starting pitchers that are not going to go deep into games, they need the bullpen. You can't use it up with DeGrom.
Yeah, that was such a dumb decision. That's the one that boggles my mind the most. And I think it bothered most people. I was watching something. I saw a clip from the Michael Kay show. I forgot what his name is. Don LaGreca. Yeah, he was going off about how he needs to pitch. It just doesn't make sense at all. And Luis Rojas had a lot of faith in the bullpen that they could pitch well, but they just didn't. It just blew up in his face. Okay, let me go back. What's up next? Before we get into Bauer, which we're going to talk about, I want to talk about some of the positives from the season because we've been talking about the negatives a lot. So some of the positives, I think Taijuan Walker pitched outstanding. I know he gave up 2 runs, but I think those were kind of dinky runs. He pitched so well. I was watching with it on mute because I had to get some work done, so I didn't get to hear what Gary, Keith, and Ron were saying. But his fastball seemed to be on it. I think it was up to 96, 97 when he last year, 2 years ago, was at 94 or something. So that's a huge upgrade in velocity. And he just pitched so outstanding, was constantly getting the balls in the strike zone. He wasn't getting a lot of balls. It was really nice to see. I, from the beginning, was excited that the Mets got Taijuan Walker. And I think he's going to be a huge addition to the Mets. And at some point, if people stay healthy, he's going to be their number 4 or 5 starter. That's really good. And I'm really excited to see more of him because I think he's definitely flew under the radar for a Mets signing. Thoughts?
So Walker, when you look at his career array, it's wonderful. He's up there with whatever pitcher you want to throw out there, but it's always come down to health. So, as long as Walker's healthy, this guy is going to be really, really effective on the mound. What stood out to me was the 2 defensive plays he made coming off the mound, throwing guys out. I was like, for a guy that's so big, he flew off that mound and was getting people out. So that stood out to me. Fielding your position, that's always a nice little bonus. He's young. He's going to be here for a few years. Right. So if you let Marcus Stroman walk, you put Taijuan Walker in the rotation, and you'll still be just fine. So I'm really excited for what he could bring for the future. I think his personality matches with New York. I think he's going to fit in with this clubhouse. You see, he's very active on social media. Mm-hmm. So I think this was a really, really nice addition. He's someone I wanted the whole offseason. And it took them a while, but they got it done.
Yeah, I'm very excited to see what he can do the rest of the season. Next person, Marcus Stroman, pitched really well his first time out. Obviously, this was the second time out, but it's 9 pitches, like we said. But his first time out, he was doing exactly what Marcus Stroman has always wanted to do, which is a ground ball hitter. And what we saw his first time with his first season with the Mets is he was able to get ground balls, but a lot of times he just struggled and couldn't get ground balls that were fieldable ground balls, if that makes sense. I don't know. That kind of went away from me, the metaphor there, but whatever. Basically,
contact.
Yeah. And he was able to do that exactly. I think he had 3 strikeouts. He's a different type of pitcher than what Jacob deGrom is, which is a strikeout guy. He's a ground ball pitcher, which I haven't seen a lot of, but it was nice to see that it actually worked for him. And hopefully that can continue to work for him because he seemed really good. And I was excited to watch him again today, but now I have to wait 5 more days. Either way, I liked what I saw from Stroman for sure.
Agreed.
Last up is Pete Alonso. I think during the Marlins series, I don't know if he has a hit yet, but
he had the home run against the Phillies. But
yeah. Against the Phillies, he looked really good. And what he's been able to do is lay off certain pitches that he always was susceptible to previous seasons. Even when he had 53 home runs, he's had a better eye at the plate for sure, making longer at bats, which is also another positive from the Mets season so far. They've been able to make some long at bats with certain pitchers and get them out of the game. But either way, Pete Alonso has looked really good. I'm also excited to see what he does the rest of the season. But those are 3 positives that I take so far from the season, even though there has been some negatives for sure. You try and keep things somewhat positive if you're a Mets fan. That's the best way to get through a Mets season.
Alonso's defenses look good too. I mean,
I forgot. Yeah,
he's
really
made plenty of very nice plays, and that's important because now you're not like, oh, do we have to maybe take Alonso out late game defense and move Dom over to first? I don't feel like you really need to do that right now. So that's good to see. If he's developing, he's improving. He's still very young, like you said, Brian. That's what stands out the most. Not chasing those pitches in the dirt. He's still chasing a little too many of the high ones. The high fastball, he goes after it, especially in that game against the Marlins. I mean, 3 strikeouts for him. As a team, they struck out there was like 12 times. So I mean that's how you struggle with runners on base. I mean, if you're striking out, you can't even get a sacrifice fly. But all in all, I mean, this is a much more like the 2019 Alonso compared to the 2020 Alonso, because his power was there, but he definitely did struggle a bit too much offensively last year. And even defensively, he tried to overdo it. He'd rob the second baseman, then he can't cover first. Yeah. But I mean, he's just been able, good reaction time, trimmed down a little bit. I mean, off the social media, he's locked in. So I'm really excited to see what he could bring this year. He could be a huge impact because we talked about J.D. Davis had to bat third so much last year because he was the only right-hander that was at least getting on base. If you could have Alonso to be that guy that brings you good right-handed balance right in the middle of the order, with as much as Lindor and Nimmo are getting on, as well as he can hit the ball in the ballpark, it equals a lot of runs.
Yeah. All right. Next thing we want to talk about is Trevor Bauer. Trevor Bauer so far this season maybe has pitched well for the Dodgers, but he's been in a lot of icky situations. I forgot what the first thing was. I guess we can start with the most recent thing. So his from his start against the Athletics, some of the baseballs were taken back to I guess yeah. They've been being inspected for some pine tar, I would assume, is what they're expecting to be, because there was stickiness on some of the baseballs that he was pitching. And the thing with Trevor Bauer is, if you've watched his video, if you know Trevor Bauer or anything he really says, is that he's trying to get the little inch ahead of any of other opponents. And he's talked about how pine tar it's unfairly like put against the pitchers, that the pitchers can't use it, but then there's certain pitchers that do use it, like Garrett Cole. And it's before the season, it was like an unwritten rule that it's like says you can't use it, but pitchers can use it. Now baseball's trying to crack down on it, and I guess the first person they're cracking down on is Trevor Bauer. We'll see what comes back. I don't think anything has come out from that, like what he used. But I mean, Trevor Bauer he might have pitched well for the Dodgers so far, but I would imagine he's been somewhat of distraction for some people in the Dodgers organization. What was the first thing that there was? The baseballs, and then there was something else that
the no hitter that all of a sudden became 4 runs all at once against the Colorado.
That was definitely that. But there was something else that Trevor Bauer did, not like ability, like he did something off the field that was
probably on social media arguing with somebody on Twitter, most likely.
I don't know, but he's been he definitely hasn't quieted down since he got his big contract.
Yep.
And I mean, I think if he was on the Mets, I'd be like more lenient with him, but he's just starting to really annoy me. But either way, we'll go next up is our last thing, the predictions for next week. Everyone said 3-2 last week. It'll be interesting to see how those things change. So the Mets play the Phillies and the Rockies next week. I wanted to do this like on the spot, what I think. It's so hard for me because I want the Mets to just like go 5-0 or 6-0. I think it must be 6 games that they play.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say 3-3.
I was going to go with the same. I think, you split Philadelphia. Hopefully, I mean, it's 4 games, but Coors Field, I don't think you could sweep there. It's just like it's such a toss-up when you play in Colorado. Anything can happen. So you're bound to lose at least 1 game. So I'm going to have to agree with you. 3-3. Hopefully, we're right this time, because if they have a losing record after this stretch, just again, you put yourself in a hole. Philadelphia's off to a good start, so you don't want to keep losing head-to-head matchups against them. Like that was the team that we weren't really afraid of when we were looking at the division. And the bullpen looks much better this year than it did last year. That's what hurt them was the bullpen.
Mhm.
But since Philadelphia made a lot of additions, the lineup is pretty nasty. I mean, they could put up runs, a ton of runs, especially in Citizens Bank. So it's going to be, another chance to face them. And hopefully the Mets play better.
Yeah.
I'm going to go 4-2 just to change it up a little bit. So I don't have the same exact take. I'm going to go in the positive direction because I was thinking 2-4. I was like, you know what? No, we'll go 4-2. We'll give them positive. I want them to overachieve what they've done the past couple of weeks. I'm expecting at least 2, or if not all 3 of those 4 wins would be from Philly. Just like you said, it's going to be hard to do that in Coors Field.
Yeah.
And I know Phillies are a tough team to go against, but they're the team we get a streak up against. And it wouldn't be the Rockies just because it's away. But if it was home, 100% would give it to the Rockies. Give it to us against the Rockies.
Right.
All right.
Because Rockies aren't good, but that place is just so unknown. Really anything could happen. Yeah.
Maybe it could help I hope the Mets struggles don't continue into the Rocky series, but it could definitely help spur the Mets in the right direction, hopefully.
For sure.
But that about wraps up this week's podcast. Thanks for listening. We'll be back next week with another podcast. I guess that's about it. Thanks for listening and also watching. We're on YouTube. Bye.